Actually, I've been wearing this since early November, but we had virtual meetings.
Yeah.
I didn't get to show it off until now.
So we were out on sleds during what was going to be the Michigan State game, and I was telling the boys what a great sacrifice they'd made on load-out program to record it. And when we got back, of course, found out it had been canceled.
I've been telling everybody they chickened out. They found an excuse.
They extended it to Purdue too.
You know what?
They
Extended it to Purdue also.
yeah.
When we beat them, I want to beat them at full strength. I don't want any excuses.
I'm not that picky.
I don't want any excuses. The best man at my wedding is U of M grad, and he lives in California, so anytime Michigan State or U of M are playing, we text back and forth and kind of do our own play-by-play. And I don't want to give him any excuses to whine. He's still
Whining about the football game, isn't he?
yeah, he's still screaming about the terrible calls in the football game. Yeah.
Bummer, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I live in a divided house, so
Yeah.
2 of us are state fans and 2 are Michigan fans. It's always interesting.
My wife used to divide us, or describe us as a mixed marriage.
Based on alma mater.
Yeah, well, I get degrees from both, so, but for the first few years we were married, I rooted for Michigan just to tick her off. After 4 years, it's not as much fun. Over here, Bill.
Well, it's about time.
Come in from the cold.
What are you doing?
I walk in and their glasses are all fogged up. They're gonna ooh.
Are we ready? Okay.
Scott's not going to be here?
Hmm?
Is Scott?
Scott's not going to be here.
That's why you're in this year.
That's why I'm here, yes. And I will now call to order the January 10, 2022 meeting of the Meridian Township Planning Commission. First order of business, take the roll. Let's start with Mr. Primo.
Here.
Mr. McConnell.
Present.
Ms. Shrewsbury.
Present.
Mr. Richards.
Present.
Ms. Snyder.
Present.
Mr. Bloomer.
Present.
And Ms. Cordell.
Present.
Ms. Bloomer, I've got everybody?
Yep.
Okay, and I'm here, Mr. Trezise, and we will go ahead. First order of business is public remarks. We have 3, I think we have a public meeting tonight, or I mean let's see. Public hearing, do we have one? No, we don't.
We do.
We do. Okay. So we'll have 3 opportunities to make public remarks. The first is now, the last is at the end of the meeting. Those time periods are available for the public who wants to speak on any subject pertinent to the Planning Commission, and then there is a public comment section during the public hearing, which will be restricted to the subject of that hearing. If you wish to speak, you have 3 minutes. We would ask you to fill out a card identifying yourself and your residence and giving it to me. I don't see any cards. And do we have a member of the public which speak now or not? Do you wish to speak now, or are you here for the public hearing? Well, we'll call you then. Seeing nobody, we have an approval of the agenda. Agenda has been provided. Moved for approval. And a second. We have Mr. Bloomer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes from the December 13 regular meeting, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I so moved.
Mr. Primo, second from Mr. Richards. Any comments on the minutes or corrections? All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Communications. We have no communications that have been provided to the board at this time. Public hearing, we have a public hearing for special use permit extension 18-051 involving the property at 1954 Saginaw Highway. It's a multifamily housing development. I'd ask Mr. Schmidt if he has anything to say to this, or who do we have here?
Good evening.
Hi.
It's my first time actually speaking in front of you. I am Brian Shorkey. I am your new senior planner. I was introduced last
Welcome.
month, but that was virtual.
I don't recognize you with your mask.
It's mutual.
That's fair.
I'll
That's
make
fair.
this really quick. Mr. Balaram Singh received a special use permit for the construction of a two-phased multiple family housing development with 7 dwelling units, 2 detached and 5 attached, at his property at 1954 Saginaw Highway. That happened on June 25th, 2018, and you have the minutes of that meeting in your packet. One of the conditions of approval was that Mr. Singh could not begin construction of Phase 2, which was the attached residential, the 5-unit residential building, without the extension of public water to the site. The approval gave Mr. Singh 4 years to commence the construction of Phase 2, but public water has not been extended to the site. Now, that was, as I said, a condition. The minutes from that June 25th meeting show that the Planning Commission allowed for a 1-year extension to be granted. Mr. Singh has requested that 1-year extension, and that's all he's asking for tonight, and that's the whole purpose of the public hearing, is just to officially grant the 1-year extension. He's asking for that so he can pursue financing for the extension of the public water, which would allow him then to begin construction of Phase 2. Staff has observed no major concerns with this request, and I do need to update. I did receive a comment from the public as of 10 after 3 on Friday. I did speak to her this morning, and she's okay. She was afraid it was a new request, and once I explained it's just an extension, there were no concerns. Staff does recommend the Planning Commission approve with conditions, or deny the extension request at this time. Mr. Singh has emailed me, and I passed on to you digitally this morning, a letter to the Planning Commission dated January 10th. I do have hard copies of his letter if anybody needs it.
I'd take it.
Thank you.
Also, Brian.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I didn't see your email.
That's it, though. That's all I have.
Mr. Singh, do you wish to speak to us?
I had a question for Stan.
Okay.
As I understand it, there are 2 potential water sources to solve this dilemma.
There is a water line to the east that terminates at the Bath Township Mire. There's one to the west that terminates at the New Hope Church. And then Mr. Singh can give you more detail about this, but my understanding, because we spoke last week, there's a possibility of running a water line from the north through a neighborhood in Bath Township into his property that would, there's an He can give you the details, but there's an older agreement in place that from Bath Township side, I haven't seen a copy of that agreement. I don't know if we reciprocated at that time, so I don't know the potential of that.
All right, thank you.
But one of those lines is Florida Water and Light and one is Meridian Township.
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions first? Mr. Singh?
Good evening.
Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, my first name is Balaram K. Singh. Last name is S-I-N-G-H. Live in Meridian Township, Hazlet. And I have a short statement to make that under phase 2, I have a problem getting the water, public water. I have the public sewer is already in the property. So I've been trying to get hold of Board of Water Light, see if they could help me connect that at a lower rate or hire some subcontractors who can do much cheaper than they could do it. They gave me a couple of names to contact for subcontracting the water service hooked up from the Meyer gas station all the way going west about 600 feet to hook up the water to my property. And obviously I could not get hold of anybody in the last 3 years because of the pandemic. A lot of time was lost. And my wife also had a diagnosis with breast cancer, so I was taking care of her for almost 19 months. She passed away. So there was a delay of 3-4 years. I couldn't do much to contact. So my next option will be to contact the Meridian Township Board, see if they would help me in this situation. Since the public water is currently located near the church on M78 on north side. My property is also on the north side, so it's about 800 feet crossing from that location to my house, and or BWL location 600 feet. So they're asking $200,000 to hook up, which is going to cost prohibitive for me to go for that kind of expense. So the other way I can do it is to install a well temporarily until I get the public water in place. Then I can hook it up to the public water system and disconnect the well system. That I can do it. The second option I have to meet within 1 year period. So I'm kind of stuck in the mud without the option to exercise anything else. So I want an extension of at least 1 year, in which time I like to probe if any opportunity exists in the future. Maybe we never know what happens. So extension of 1 year is kind of asking the Planning Commission to approve it.
Are there any questions for Mr. Singh?
I think it's a reasonable request that you have,
Okay.
so
Yes.
that your project can go forward. I would recommend approval.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bloomer?
Mr. Singh, is your project otherwise secure except for the water problem?
Yes.
So if you solve the water problem, then the rest of the project can go forward on schedule?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
If you solve the water access problem, then the rest of your project
Yes.
is secure?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Richard?
Yeah, I noticed that the one-year time period is actually from July of 2022 through July 2023. And we're in January now, so is there a reason why you are requesting it now as opposed to maybe coming up with a solution in the short term or in the next 5 months?
You're asking why that 4-year delay?
No, I'm asking, or maybe I guess I'm just pointing out that we're really talking about 1.5 years from now. So this would give you 1.5 years to basically solve the water issue for the property, correct?
I didn't make out what you're saying.
Yeah. I guess I don't have a question. I just want to point out
Yeah.
that it's actually 1.5 years from
Well, he
now.
already has until July to do it.
Yes.
This is an extension beyond the July termination date.
Yeah, so the issue really is that they're not gonna be able to build it in the next 6 months, even if you had a solution tomorrow,
Okay.
given weather, supply chain issues. So the extension was gonna be necessary no matter what. So when they approached us originally, we just said, just get it in, we'll get it extended. That way you have some certainty and can move forward to trying to solve this problem in the next, before what is the expiration date, no matter what, July 2023.
Okay.
Would also point out to Mr. Singh that your alternative choice of building a well would require action by the Planning Commission because this rezoning was allowed contingent on public water. So if that is the route you need to go, you need to be talking back to the office here to arrange for an application for that to go forward.
Okay. So the application, I should make it to Township Board?
I would make the application to Mr. Wright,
Okay.
and he will get you to the right spot if you have to go to a well. If you do find a way to hook up to public water, that complies with the variance we gave you at the time, and so that would comply. It's if you cannot get public water, you need to explore your alternatives for a well and get the proper approvals for that.
As far as installing a new well to serve this unit, I checked with the Ingham County Health Department, and they have no objection to having a well installed just to serve this building until the public sewer is in place, so I can move forward that way.
But I would say that the rezoning request and the approval we gave was contingent on public water, so you will need to get that waived also. It's just another step.
Okay.
I'm not sure it would be a problem. It's just that in order to get everything in order, you would need to have approval to modify our action from 2018 and this extension to allow for the alternative for a well.
Okay.
He's providing information.
Just information. It's nothing you need to do tonight.
Okay.
So, any other discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the extension.
Okay, and we've got a second from the board. Any further discussion?
Just a point of clarification.
Yes.
Do we typically have a motion that says, because we normally don't
Yes,
vote on
we should
these.
actually do a straw ballot on this, and then it would come back with the resolution at the next meeting.
Correct, unless we waived.
And we don't have a document in front of us to, I'll defer to Mr. Schmidt.
Given that it's just an extension, actually, we typically don't do resolutions for extension.
Okay.
This is just a quirk in the ordinance that requires a public hearing under this specific circumstance. So if you did waive your rules, you could simply just make a motion to approve the one-year extension.
Okay. I would need a motion to waive the rules first. Mr. Bloomer? Okay.
I'm amenable.
Okay, and Ms. Cordell? Take a roll call on that. Mr. McConnell?
Yeah.
Ms. Cordell?
Yes.
Ms. Shrewsbury?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes,
Ms. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomer?
Yes.
Mr. Primo?
Yes.
And the board also, or the chair also votes yes. So the waiver is in place. And now we'll go back to Mr. Bloomer's motion to approve the extension, supported by Ms. Cordell. And absent any other discussion, I will again call the roll on this. Mr. McConnell?
Yes.
Ms. Cordell?
Yes.
Ms. Shrewsbury?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomer? Mr. Schneider? Ms. Snyder? I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Mr. Primo?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, Trezise. So it is approved, and good luck on your development. And I would say the public hearing commenced at 7:05 and is now closed at 7:20. Our next item on the agenda is item 8, unfinished business. We have none. Item 9, other business. We have the election of officers. We have to elect a chair, vice chair, and secretary, I believe, for the officers of the commission. Yes,
I would
Mr. Richards.
nominate Commissioner Bloomer for the position of Chair of the Planning Commission.
What is Mr. Bloomer's feeling about that?
I spoke with current chair, Mr. Hendrickson, and after speaking with him, I will accept that nomination.
Okay. I would support that. Is there anybody else that has another name to nominate? Being said, we'll take the roll call. Mr. McConnell?
Yes.
Ms. Cordell?
Yes.
Ms. Shrewsbury?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomer?
Thank you, yes.
Mr. Primo?
Yes.
And the temporary chair also votes yes. And if you would like to take over this meeting, you're welcome
You want
to.
to see how badly I can screw it up from here? Can I stay here, or do we have to shift?
You can stay there, I believe.
All right. At this point, there are 2 other positions.
We need nominations for vice chair.
Sorry about that.
Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I would nominate our current Vice Chair, Vice Chair Trezise, assuming he would take the position.
I would take the position if that's the desire of the board.
Second motion?
Any discussion on that nomination? All right. Can we call the roll?
I had to cheat too.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner McConnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cordell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shrewsbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Trezise,
Yes.
Commissioner Primo,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right. And the last, do we have nomination for commission secretary?
I would nominate Commissioner Primo.
Can I second him?
And third?
Been there, done that.
Well, you can turn it down.
That's fine.
Is there a second for Mr. Primo's nomination?
I have thirded it.
Seconded by Mr. McConnell. All right. Any discussion for this nomination? Then the chair will call for a vote again. Commissioner McConnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cordell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shrewsbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Trezise,
Yes.
Commissioner Primo,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well. There are no other electable seats, is that correct?
That's correct.
I believe that's correct.
That is accurate.
All right, then that closes 9A. 9B is Planning Commission Liaison Assignments. The chair will go first. I'm liaison to the Downtown Development Authority, and I have to apologize to the group. There was a Downtown Development Authority meeting. I was not able to attend it because I was trying desperately to get my daughter back on an airplane. It didn't work. She ended up driving home. But I tried 4 times, and I missed the meeting because of that. Do we have any other liaison reports?
So, apologies, Mr. Chair, these are actually assignments for the next year. for the upcoming year.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just misread it.
Just briefly, there are 7 commissions and committees that the Planning Commission generally has a liaison to. Obviously, anyone is permitted to go to any meeting at any time. They're all public meetings, but the Planning Commission has historically made appointments as a liaison to the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Corridor Improvement Authority, the Downtown Development Authority, the Environmental Commission, the Economic Development Corporation, the Transportation Commission, and the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. The memo in your packet outlines the current meeting dates and times and the current assignments. You're welcome to keep the exact same assignments if you like. You're welcome to change them up. I can tell you that the majority of the commissions are not meeting this month due to COVID, and it's distinctly possible that further meetings will be postponed, but this is the general schedule that we will be following for the next year.
I can say that I will be happy to continue on the PRA committee.
Ms. Cordell?
Unless someone is very eager to go on the Corridor Improvement Authority, I'm happy to continue.
Sorry. Maybe we can shorten it by doing it this way. Is there anyone currently not willing to continue with their current assignment as a liaison?
The only thing I would point out is, I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe historically the chairperson has been the representative to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that is something we may...
I'm not sure that's true.
But I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
The chairperson, I was trying to look back through the minutes and it was for a while. I'm not sure if it's fallen that way or if it was an unwritten rule. Okay. Just wanted to point that out. I wanted to make sure that we talked about that before.
And I did speak to Mr. Hendrickson today, and he is willing to continue as the liaison to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Excellent. All right, so again, the chair requests anyone who is not happy with their current assignment, please identify.
And I make a motion that we accept the appointments as written.
Is there a second for that? Second by Ms. Shrewsbury. All right. I guess at this point then is there any discussion on this? No? All right, then we'll take a roll call vote on the motion for people to continue as currently situated. Commissioner McCow?
Yes.
Commissioner Cordell?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrewsbury?
Yes.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Tresice?
Yes.
Commissioner Primo?
Yes.
The board votes yes, the chair votes yes. It should also be recognized that based on statements from Commissioner Tresice, we expect that Commissioner Hendrickson will also stay with the Zoning Board of Appeals. All right, thank you. All right, so now we move on to item 9C, the amendment to fence height. And should we take C? These all probably could be discussed together, couldn't they?
So a last minute change in talking to ex officio Chair Hendrickson that we sort of wrote this up as one item in an effort to keep the meeting short this evening. This is the beginning of those so-called quality of life ordinance amendments that we briefly started talking about at the end of last year. These are the first 5. We'll bring them forward just for your information so you have an idea of what we're looking at, so you can start to think about these. We're going to schedule a public hearing for February once we get a sense of where we're at with the variance and meeting schedules, and at that point we can have further discussion if you'd like, but largely these are, I'll be honest, these are the easy ones of the list we have. Height of fences, it's an item that was discussed recently with the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's something that's popped up a couple times on projects already, so we're recommending some slight modification there to allow for some flexibility in non-residential settings only. The standards the Zoning Board of Appeals uses to make their decisions, there's currently 8. State law actually only has 5. Several of ours are somewhat overlapping, and the ZBA has historically struggled in trying to differentiate between a couple of the standards. So we've tried to streamline those and get them more into compliance, get them more directly into compliance with the state law. The traffic impact study, there was a change made to the MUPUD ordinance that the Planning Commission recommended a change, and then the Township Board actually took it a step further. And so in an effort to make that consistent across all our applications, we're recommending a series of changes there. as sort of the new standard for what we expect a traffic impact study to be submitted for. The front yard coverage in the Lake Lansing residential district is something the Zoning Board of Appeals has struggled with for years and years and years, and we're trying to, this is sort of a first bite at the apple on that overlay district. I think we recognize that some large-scale changes need to be made to address some of the patterns that we've seen, but this is the first one to try and address some of the initial concerns the ZBA has had. And then just kind of a weird, quirky one that we've run into is that technically you're only allowed to have one deck in a rear yard, and in a situation where you have a sloped yard, technically you have to have 2 decks in some circumstances. And so we're trying to just clarify that so that it's permitted. It's one of those things that I believe the previous director had a unique interpretation workaround that's allowed it in certain circumstances, but we're just trying to clear it up so it's everyone understands it is permitted if you meet the setback requirements. So these are sort of the first round of things. We're going to get you another round. Whatever our next meeting is, we'll get you another round of these, and we'll start to kick these up to you on a regular basis. If you have any concerns, please reach out to me, offline or through email or phone or whatever works best for you. But like I said, we'll bring these forward for public hearing unless I hear a great social and political uprising over them.
I can say I was encouraged by the fact that in many cases you simplified the language.
That's always our goal.
I agree with that.
Yeah, with regard to the traffic study standards, I have a problem with where you're trying to go, but it looks like it's self-contradictory in section 5, where you're required, if it's going to generate between 50 and 99 directional trips during the peak hour, and then the next paragraph between 250 and 750. And in both cases, they're talking about all phases of the development. So you may want to look at that and see if we've got some confusion there.
So first paragraph is actually a lower standard.
Right.
It's essentially, well, it's a different study too. It's actually a traffic assessment, which is basically like a 3-pager usually. The traffic impact study is a much more detailed document.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand then.
I had a question on procedure.
Yes.
Is the public hearing would be a planning commission hearing?
Correct. It's an amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Okay, that makes sense. Would other concerned boards and commissions be expected to weigh in at that public hearing?
We will be taking this to Transportation in February, Zoning Board of Appeals in February, and that's all for this list.
Okay.
But yeah, as generally what we're going to try and do is as we bring these forward, we're also going to schedule them to go to the necessary board or commission.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Corda.
I appreciate you putting this together and simplifying as mentioned. I did have some questions or a little language difference. The first one I was wondering about was it's in the review of an application for variance. The Zoning Board of Appeals should determine, it's that one. It's number 3. Granting the variance is the minimum action necessary, which would carry out the spirit of the zoning ordinance, secure public safety, and provide substantial justice. I was wondering if it makes, instead of provide substantial justice, to provide reasonable use of the property.
We can look into that, absolutely.
And let's see. On the traffic assessment and the traffic impact study, I was just wondering what about the difference? Because I understand the traffic assessment is for directional trips, which I gather is one way. Is that correct?
Correct.
Between 50 and 99. But then the traffic impact statement is generating 250 more. So what happens to the ones that are 100 or 249?
It's a good question. We'll,
Okay. And yeah, so I saw that there was a gap there, and I would just recommend that in the second paragraph where it talks about the impact study, just to use the same language and based on the most current edition of the same handbook. So it's just reiterating.
I would just to capitalize on what she just suggested, I think words like reasonable and justice are so nebulous that they need to not be used. I think something like accepted, that implies that somebody within the township has to review and accept. You know, who determines what is reasonable, and how does a person applying know what that means? In the same way, there are varying opinions on justice. So, I mean, that's just an example in terms of using words that are, I'm not going to say reasonable, that can be clearly understood and represented by the township. I think some of our problems at times are we use vague language that then creates a lot of discussion that may or may not need to occur if we were more concise. That would be my recommendation relative to any changes you make in the language.
I have more, if I may.
I'm sorry.
I looked at the requirement for a traffic assessment or impact study may be waived by the director. I'm just trying to better understand the circumstances. A says the existing level of service is not determined to be significantly impacted by the proposed development due to the nature of the request or special conditions of the subject site. I mean, if you have like a numerical tipping for one or the other, can you explain to me how particular circumstances would be significant to lend itself to that situation? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think something along the lines of, a good example would probably be the Bank of America building on Grand River Avenue. If someone was coming in proposing a new bank there where there was no change to the curb cuts, no change to the building, no change to the parking, but because it has a drive-through, requires a special land use, we would probably waive the traffic study in that requirement. It's the exact same use in the exact same building with the exact same access point. Even though technically one would be required because a bank of that size would probably have more than 50 directional trips in a day.
Sure. Would it, excuse me for saying it, would it be reasonable then to state that kind of scenario where it's not a change in use?
Yeah, I don't think we'd want to codify that into the ordinance. Okay. I think that's what we're, you know, I think it's just a circumstance, and that's frankly the only one I can come up with off the top of my head.
Okay, sure. That's fine. I'm sorry, can I bug you on one more?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm here for.
Okay, this is the Lake Lansing Residential Overlay District.
Yep.
And maybe it's how I read it. I should probably read it again. So it's maximum driveway coverage. A driveway shall not occupy more than 65% of the total area of the front yard for residential lots created and recorded prior to a date in 1960 and are less than 65 feet at the street line. I just recommend, just for clarity's sake, to and are less than 65 feet in width to follow immediately after residential lots, because it almost looked like the driveway was going to be 65 feet wide, and I don't think that's the intent. It's the lot width.
Understood.
And I think I think it's, these are great changes, and that's the last one I noticed.
Commissioner Cordell's question made me realize, I'm not certain how a front yard is calculated. I know in my subdivision covenants, there's reference to a building line. Is that how we understand the definition of a front yard?
No, typically subdivision covenants have a different standard than most zoning ordinances, and especially in the situation with the Lake Lansing residential overlay, because the problem we find is most of these lots are actually also requesting front yard variances, and so that instantly pushes, what it does is it sort of shrinks the area that you can make that calculation off of, and so now your front yard is from the front of the house to the street line, or to the street line, the right-of-way line. And so typically what you're going to see here in Meridian Township is it's going to be the front of the house to the right-of-way line, not necessarily the build-to line, because some subdivisions have it pushed back further. Although they can align, they don't necessarily align.
Okay. I'm interested in learning more about how that's, the difference between a building line and a front of the house kind of thing, but we don't need to take time here.
Yeah.
Were there any other questions? The only thing that jumped out at me was you used the phrase qualified traffic engineer, but there's no definition of what constitutes qualification.
But that, and I guess I'd follow that up. Are you talking about licensed or a certain amount of training or
Credentials or something.
Yeah.
Yep, we'll look into that.
Yeah, that's just inviting controversy if you don't describe what they have to qualify as.
Understood.
Yes.
I had a suggestion for further simplification. The reference to the manual could actually fit at the end of section 2. A traffic assessment or impact study may be required as in conformance with this standard, and then in the 2 paragraphs later on, it's already understood. You don't need to repeat it. Which manual is being used. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
Is there any further discussion on this? Sorry.
I have a question on the traffic study piece.
In section 2, you're taking out B3, which says all other special uses that are required under Article 4, Division 2. I don't see that picked up down below in the requirements. Is that because that's no longer a requirement, or should that be somewhere too? Are there other cases that aren't described here that?
No, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to describe all cases
Okay.
within these changes.
Okay, so then you wouldn't have anything that isn't
Yeah,
described.
so we
Okay,
can get rid of all the extra language.
got it. Thank you. If you explained that before, I apologize.
No, that's a good question.
And then I had one more on the Lake Lansing piece. I see that it says A covers those that are created and recorded prior to October 5th, 1960, and are less than 65 feet in width at the street line. And then B is those that are greater than 65 feet at the street line. But it doesn't have anything about those that are after 1960 that might be wider than, or is that just everything that's wider than 65 feet?
That's everything that's wider than 6.
Okay.
Basically, the way this ordinance is set up more broadly is that 65 feet appears to be sort of the tipping point for whether
Okay.
you get some additional help or not.
So is there any requirement for those that are less than 65 feet but built after 1960?
That
Or
would
created and
not be,
recorded, or there aren't any that
that
are?
shouldn't be a legal law.
Okay, got it.
I say that.
That
I'm
goes
sure
before
there's
my
one or two
time,
out
so,
there, but
okay.
That
I just
shouldn't
want
be
to
a
make sure
legal
we're not
law.
missing something when we have the opportunity to change it. So thank you for really answering my nitpicky questions.
No, that's why we brought these forward like this.
Is there any further discussion? Thank you. So, that closes item 9. Item 10, Township Board update.
I actually do not have an update for the board. The Planning Commission, I think, met 2 days after the Township Board in December, and so, or shortly thereafter. I believe the calendar fell that way so that we were the last board to meet last year.
And liaison reports. I already apologized for my liaison report. Does anyone have another?
We have not met, the BRA committee has not met for a while, so no report there.
So there are none. All right, so we're on item 11, new applications. I don't believe there are any, are there?
Nothing from the planning commission. The only new thing that we've gotten recently is the Trader Joe's site plan. That's currently under review.
Okay. And approved, no approved site plans then.
Not quite, almost.
So this brings us to item 12, which is open public remarks. We are on the air, aren't we?
We are.
Do we know if anybody's trying to call in?
We do not have a phone line this evening.
So then, absent any other information, I believe that we'll close item 12. So we are now to item 13, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Commissioner McConnell, seconded by Commissioner Primo. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Could one of you send out